to apologize for the few technical issues that came up in Zoom, but this is my first week of a guest figuring it out. But I think we have a great episode here for you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for spending time with us. And this is the Triangle Strategy episode with my friend Jeremiah. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Menu Combat. As per usual, this is a podcast for JRPG fans who love to customize their party. This week is special. We got a special guest here, one of my close friends, Jeremiah. Jeremiah, say hello.
Hey everyone, what's going on? I don't do this podcast thing, but I was invited because you and I we play the same. Well, we don't really play the same games. We play a lot of weird games, but sometimes there's some overlap, and a lot of overlap is in the strategy department. You call them TRPGs or whatever, but tactical RPGs. And I'm a big Fire Emblem fan, so that's our next game. But I guess today we're here for triangle strategy.
Triangle strategy. So today we're going to mainly focus talking about triangle strategy. That's what we've both been grinding on, and then there'll be a little bit conversation about comparing triangle strategies to some other tactical RPGs. If you're listening now, we think it was yesterday Nintendo finally put up Fire Emblem 7 on Nintendo Switch Online. Now, I don't think Jeremiah got any chance to play this. I actually been playing it. Part of the reason why we started late is that I was playing it while I was waiting for him to show up. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then there's some music stuff as per usual. Of what's the Bard's Tale? We'll tell you what the Bard's been playing. But so there's so many places we can go with triangle strategy. I think we'll start with the thing that I think is the most exciting thing for both of us. We want to talk about who might be the greatest JRPG character of all time. I'm going to just talk about Benedict. For those who don't know, Benedict is one of the most shrewd. Like, I think about all the tactical RPGs that try to either frame you as a tactician or frame like you're a real good decision maker. But Benedict is the most. I don't know what it is, but I think the decisions that Triangle Strategy sets up, right, where there's decisions around morality, utility, and freedom, he is very much a utility-driven person. And it makes the conversations you have with Benedict play out. And I think it led to something that you highlighted as what makes Benedict special from a mechanical point of view. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you're highlighting with Benedict mechanically, and I'll talk about him from a story perspective.
Yeah, one thing is, it's funny you bring up Fire Emblem 7. That was my very first Fire Emblem. Like I told you the other day, I stole some money out of my dad's wallet, went to the GameStop, bought me a Game Boy Advance Micro, and just picked the game on the wall. It was Fire Emblem. And so that's when I fell in love with just this genre of RPGs in general. But when I think about, Benedict, when we think about Benedict, he makes me think about how when you look at Fire Emblem Awakening, and so your main character was supposed to be this strategist or this tactician or whatever, and that makes sense because you are you're the player, so you have to put the units in the right space and things like that. But I think what you're going to do is you're going to dive deeper into like how does this play from a character and storyline point of view, but also when you think about these branching paths. And I told you that after playing, Benedict is probably the greatest utility player or non-healer support player ever.
Right.
And is I don't think it's close at all.
I think about how every other game does utility players, right? So like I'm playing Fire Emblem 7 again, and I'm like, oh, you have the dancers, you have, and then even in this game, and I'll lean that I like Julio a lot. Julio gives you additional TP to have more moves to choose from. But just the stat buffs that Benedict gives you changes how you move with certain characters. You talked about the synergy that played up. I think the reason why I got so hyped about Benedict is that he's willing to sacrifice everything in the name of House Wolford. Like that to me is like, I don't know. So there's a decision early in the game. I think even if you play the demo, you get to have this decision where you have to burn the town in order to gain an advantage against certain enemies because you're outnumbered. Did you choose to burn the town? Because Benedict made the most compelling point, and I agreed. And it was a hard decision to make because I'm thinking if you do in Fire Emblem, whatever, everybody's trying to get you to be like, be kind, be considerate, be thoughtful. Benedict is like, nah, kill these folks. Like, it doesn't matter if we come out alive because of it sets the stage of the war and triangle strategy is one where you have to sacrifice. Uh, but I'm not sure if you feel the same way about the level of sacrifice that this requires you. I mean, as you said, talk about some of the strategies you had with Benedict as well.
Well, Benedict is like Benedict would fit perfect in Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
He's a Machiavellian like character. He's like a Tyrion Lannister. He's like all of that. He's honestly Benedict does not fit this game in a way.
Interested.
And because like you said, the decision of if you need this advantage, you're gonna take every advantage you need.
Yes.
And I'm playing this game and I'm like, damn, Benedict would have been really good as a hand of a king to like Daenerys. Anybody in Game of Thrones, like it's like George R. R. Martin just specifically wrote him and nobody else. And it is, and that's how great of a character he is. And one thing I will say is that I didn't choose that pathway. One, because I'm like, man, I know how, that's a hard decision to make, but and these are video games, but I'm trying to inject myself in there like, damn,
Yes.
I don't ever think I'll be a part of a royal family. I'm one of these numbers. So like, damn, do I want to be sacrificed or
Right.
will I be given enough time to actually leave? If I'm given enough time to actually leave, then all right, cool, burn my shit down
Right.
or you reimburse me or whatever. But see, I'm thinking too deep into this game.
No, I think this game may it's the thing that I like about it. I don't think there are any winning choices in this game. There are choices that you can feel a little bit better about, but you don't feel good about them. Like I here's my question for you as a choice that you made. Did you choose what did you choose to do with the Rosellians?
Um, I can't remember what the choices were, but I did every single thing that got me to the golden path. And
Okay.
so I saved it. I fought for the Rosalians, I think.
Okay. You fought for the Rosellians.
I didn't burn down the village.
You didn't okay, okay.
So everything that got me to the golden path
Okay.
is what I did. And plus it was more so this is the conundrum that you have. You don't burn down the village that's harder for you to win that level or win that,
Yes.
whatever you want to call it, beat that chapter. But if you do burn down it, then you are, you know, it's easier for you, but you miss out on something.
You
One thing that I, push back a little bit on you, there is a good ending. There is like a happy ending or a winning ending, and that's the golden,
right.
ending. But as a player, I don't feel like I won because I went down that pathway.
Right.
I don't know how far you are. You finished, right?
I'm not finished. I'm chapter 14. So I just did the stuff with the blast crystals.
Okay.
Uh
And so it's kind of like Game of Thrones season 8 in a way, to where Jon Snow. I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but it's like when Jon Snow found out that he was the heir to the Iron Throne. Sarah Noah is like Jon Snow, and Benedict is like Varys. In that last season, he was like, "Yo, you're the heir to the throne. We need to take this throne." And Roland's not good enough, and so I wish I would have went the Benedict route. And
I
just
feel like that jives with your personality, but I also feel like when you were making so did you stumble upon the golden route or did you deliberately go out of your way to make the golden route? Because I feel like for me, and this is a decision I've been doing, I've been trying to play the game with the moral conundrums and making sacrifices along the way that I because I feel like that's one thing that this game tries to show you. But I'm like, I don't know how you ended up with the golden road. I don't know if you went out of your way. As I said, for me, I've been trying to make the decisions in the game and not figure out if it's the right or wrong thing. Like I'm willing to accept the losses as they come.
So we talked about Banner Saga,
Yeah.
which is one of my other favorite games in this genre. Is that so? In Fire Emblem, you have permadeath.
Yes.
You die on the field, you're dead. In Banner Saga, you can all your units can survive or whatever, but if there's a certain choice that you made in the cutscene, one of your characters will die. You can't
Okay.
control them, which is I like that a lot.
That's pretty
But
neat.
when I was first playing Banner Saga in 2015, 2016, I went out my way to actually do find out what dialogue options can I select that can preserve my units. And
Uh
in triangle strategy, what I did was I read a review of the game. They were like, oh, these are the endings, and then you can get to this path. I said, whoa, this golden path. And they
sure.
gold is shiny. They tricked me with the words and the usage, and I fell for it. So I went out my way to actually look for that. I went out my way to try to, you know, do whatever that can get me to that, that achievement.
Right.
And one thing about Nintendo, they don't do achievements like PlayStation or
Mm-hmm.
Xbox or whatever. So you don't really get that high when you beat a boss and you hear that ding, that little trophy or whatever. You don't just get that what is it, dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And so I had to create that in my head. And the so I went out my way to actually look at what can I do. But from a gameplay point of view, it was harder. So I did get that challenge.
Mm,
So when you say, oh, when you make these decisions, if you want this pathway, you got to do it's like you have to do the hard things. And as a gamer, you want to get that full achievement.
right.
Um, but when someone who cares about characters and lore and the story, and that's sometimes like the story is supersedes the gameplay for me. I wasn't happy with what I did. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
even from like when you think about ethics, like man, as this type of person who says he loves these type of cutthroat characters or the greater good or Machiavellian, whatever, I would like to say that no, I would have made that decision. But even without knowing what the golden path was, I don't think I would have, burnt down the village unless it just got too hard for me.
Yes. What I something that I even highlight. So as I said, I chose to burn down the village. I know you didn't. The most interesting thing about this, and this is one of the things I just like about triangle strategy. I know Fire Emblem Engage plays around with this, but not to necessarily the same way. Uh, when you burn down the village, so I didn't burn down every building. I burned down what was most strategically advantageous. And so you go back to Castle Wolford afterwards to do certain votes. And like you normally do, you go back into the community. And then I realized, oh, I no longer have access to NPCs that would be in those buildings because I burnt it down. Right? You have normal people around, and then you have some gaping holes. And I was like, because one of the things I asked myself is like, how much are these decisions going to make me feel bad? And so, is it just ethically am I going to feel bad, or are they going to find it to make it feel like something that lingers? And I was like, no, that choice has remained, and I think that's one thing I've appreciated about this experience. It doesn't feel like these choices feel they don't feel fleeting. They feel like not only do you make them in the moment, but they do affect how you think about or how you interact with the people around you. One of the things that I haven't seen yet, and it comes up a lot in the game, and I'm curious as you completed the golden route, how it comes up is the importance of the Wolfort name, right? So part of the reason why I saved the Rosellans is that if our legacy is protecting these people from back then, I would be terrible to let that part go in the middle of war. But I also really don't know how much our house name is sullied because even the trade that we do, what is it? I had to trade the salt from Hyzant illegally over to Esfrost, and they were like, "Oh, if you get found out, that will screw up your legacy." But you don't. That doesn't. That's not what happens when you meet Svarog. But I'm so part of me is wondering how much are these decisions lingering? And now you, as I said, you completed it. Do you feel like a lot of decisions going through the golden route did linger? I mean, I know you said it was still a little bit anime of an ending, but I'm curious. Some of the hard decisions, did they feel like they held?
Yeah, and that's like one of my issues with the game too. Is like, as you do certain things, your conviction changes and all of that, but you don't know how much, or because that conviction, also plays a part into what characters you can recruit. And until you get New Game Plus, you really don't know how many more conviction points and like trust or utility do you need to recruit a character. And there's this one character that I really wanted, whose mother is like a high Zan priestess, but he can see into the future. And he's like an OP character. But I never got him because I didn't have enough points or whatever. Um, but you do see that your decisions do matter. They do linger. And so one thing, when I didn't burn down the village, the the citizens that were like sworn to House Wolfwood or whatever, they're like, oh my God, you're doing this, you're great, the war effort going, all this type of stuff. And it really throughout the land, I guess, in the game, people realize that too. And so your decisions do matter. They do have weight. It makes me think a little bit like Red Dead Redemption in a way where, I beat up a character and then months later or weeks later or in the next part of the game, they remember that they got beat up by Arthur Morgan and they're talking to John Marston like, yo, or Arthur Morgan helped me pay my rent and he was a good man. Then John's like, oh, well, he's dead now. Like these things do, linger, and especially in this game. And that is one of the, like I said, that is one of the great things about the game because you're constantly reminded of your decisions.
Yes.
It's not, it's like, but also when I think about the Rosalian, I know I mentioned like Game of Thrones earlier, but also it's like when I think about them, it has this weird biblical and
Yeah.
Full Metal Alchemist vibe to it too.
Oh.
It's like, when you think about who were the oppressed people in like these biblical stories or in Full Metal Alchemist, it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the Rosalian, where like stand-ins for like Hebrews and Jews in some type of way, and which is super interesting. But yeah, I the story was great, but the core theme of today's talk, I think, is just Sarah Nora is just boring.
So we're gonna get part. I think part of the reason why we said Benedict is so great is because you specifically think Serenora is not great at all. The more and more I spend time with this game, I like Serenora. But I remember the day that you played the game, the opening day, you're like, "Yo, Serenora is terrible." So why do you hate on Mr. Neutrality?
you know, and I reference when I play games, I reference other shows and other books and all that stuff. I really love Jon Snow.
Mm.
Then you watching episode season 7 and 8, and like, dog, he doesn't talk. All he says is, "You're my queen. She's my queen. I swear an oath to the queen. You're my queen." Blah 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 blah. I'm like, this nigga's boring. And Sarah Noah is the same character, and he's a great unit.
Okay, yeah. Mechanically, he's
Oh my god, he's a great unit. He's probably one of the best swordsmen I've
that's
ever
what
had.
he's the best.
Like what's that? What's the Falcon thing he does? Like it's not even like it's like so many squares away that I get.
Yes.
It's like having an archer with a sword. Like he's amazing, but boring.
I,
Um,
I want to push back with Cyrano in two ways. One, I think for the state of the game, for you to feel that Frederica, Benedict, and Roland are the proponents of the story, you need a character who's gonna play it neutral. I don't think those voting sequences work if Sarah Noah has a lot more. perspective. And so I'm not saying Sarah Noah necessarily is us, but I think they frame him so neutrally that you have to be compelled by the arguments of the people around you. And so that's the first part. But I'll ask you this. This is the part where I'm like, maybe Sarah Noah still doesn't need to be boring if that's true. I buy his romance between him and Frederica, but every review says they do not buy that. And I'm like, their part is places for Sereno to show more personality, even if he's neutral. I'm like, but the moment that makes me realize Sereno is a unique player is when he was in Hyzant and they offer him the title of the Saintly Seven, right? And he says, "No, I don't need that." And that's not a player. That's not a player character choice. That's his choice. And then when he chooses to tell about the illegal trade, he gets the other guy killed. And you can, and I is a moment when I was in that moment, it's like, wait, no, that feels calculated. I don't think Sereno did that just to be kind. I think he knew that would clean his hands. And I feel like he has a couple of moments like that where you're like, oh, he's not a naive character. He's just a little bit more curated than everybody else. But that's how I feel. Those are some of my pushbacks.
So, so you know, in Fire Emblem, they have paralogs, character
Yeah,
paralogs, things like that, and that's great because you get to know a lot of characters, a lot more. Like characters that aren't the main, character, you find a lot more about them. Then you love them a little bit more, and then you use them a little bit more.
yeah,
And so when you go to like character stories between Frederica and Sarah Noah, you you start to see more of his personality uh, between the two. But I don't buy the romance. It's an arranged marriage. That's not
right.
uncommon. But there were no, like in the core story, there were like no romantic advances
Right.
made. And so you really didn't know how he felt about her and
Mm.
vice versa. And so that makes it even harder to even, when you look at these four endings, decide with her at the end. I'm like, dog, I don't know you. I mean, I
Mm.
don't really have any romantic attachment to you. So why should I care about your people in a way?
Interesting.
And, but like the paralogue or the character stories, as they call it, the triangle strategy between the two were okay. Like, she wants to make a meal for him.
Right.
He's coming back from training or whatever it was, and but then they do end up cooking. It's just a mess, but then they work it out because I think Sarah Nora could cook or something like that. Um, so those are good character insights. We just need more of that. It is
Okay.
harder on a system like a Switch or whatever when you get more text driven
Yeah.
cutscenes as opposed to like when you plan, like I said, a Red Dead, a Halo, or a campaign mode Call of Duty. Uh, you're not getting, you got captions, but you're getting like voice acting.
Do you
And the voice acting is okay here too, so I will say that.
I actually will go in that further. Do you feel that because you know what game came out last year? I haven't played it yet. What is it called? It's another strategy game. Uh, it came out on PS4. I think it came out on Switch, but it is you do more movement in moments. But you can tell Square Enix threw like a nice AA budget at the story cutscenes. Like it's beautiful. It's gonna drive me crazy. I'm gonna have to Google it soon. It came out in like October. But do you think? I think obviously they chose this type of storytelling to make a hark back to to Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Advance Two, right? Like this is evocative of that, and what's the other one? Ogre Battle.
Yeah, the play styles were similar too. Like,
Yeah.
leverage of the tiles, like the direction, like
Yeah.
that's something I had to get used to when I first played Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I'm
Yeah.
like, what's up with this directional stuff? I'm not used to that, and
Yes.
and so that's something that no weapon triangle or things like that. That's something that I really like a lot, but it's one thing in these stories, and a lot of strategy games do it. They actually provide little cutscenes during the battle,
Mm.
or signs of dialogue and things
Yeah.
like that. But No, Cyrano is boring. I just don't care. You can come up with all these high philosophical ways of like why he is meant to be this way, and I'm like, dog, he's nothing. He's a
I
good
forget.
fighter.
I mean, this will tie back to one of my previous episodes. So I'm gonna ask you now: do you feel weird playing essentially as I think you and I can agree with it? He's a sideline character in the story, right? Like he's not the main character. The main character is whichever of the three you care most about, right?
The
So this
main
is
characters are Frederica, Benedict, and Rolo.
and so when I say that, does that make it inherently negative? Because as I mentioned in the previous episode, I think games like that can work. Like I'm thinking specifically about Xenoblade Chronicles X. I didn't care that my main character had no point. I'm like, let me see what Elba's doing. I don't, but I know for many people that's such a barrier to like a traditional storytelling. But I remember our last conversation, you were a little bit more open to that, but it seems to like Cyrano just seems to way too cookie cutter.
I guess that, but also he's too good of a unit. And one of my
Uh,
frustrations with him being too good of a unit is that you have to play with him you
yes,
know,
every battle.
every battle. And I he's so good that he takes up a lot of experience, from other units that I want to like level up. And sometimes when I try to keep him away from the battle, opposing units are drawn towards him. Like he's just OP in that way. He's really solid, and like I say, he's a swordsman who has like on certain moves, he has archer range.
Yes.
Like why? like why?
I find I so another day we have to do a tier list of these units. I'd love to do that. So outside of Roland, who was your favorite? Who was the favorite mechanical unit? Because I'll
Um,
tell you, you sold me an Archibald. Because I was not using Archibald until you talked to me about him, and then I started realizing he's a better bow user than Hewitt because he has a lot of the armor slayer stuff. And I was like, oh, this changed. Like he has terrible movement, but
terrible
because
move, but his range is like
his range is great and the armor piercing stuff, it's like he's better than a magician. As far as I'm concerned, he can hold up better than what is the name of a magician I got?
you have. Is it? I'm looking at him now.
Uh,
I don't know. I just passed off.
Narv.
Yeah, Narv.
Oh yeah, we'll talk
Narv
about
looks like a Final Fantasy like character, like
yes.
cookie cutter. It's the hat.
It is the hat. Although I like his little backstory, that his outfit is not his, that it is of his grandfather to because they wrote him outside the history book, so he wants to honor that. That's a nice little wrinkle to like the funk because you're right. Visually, he's like the most out there magician compared to everybody else.
So to go back, I'm looking at him now because she's so fast and she has versatility and what type of status effects that she has. Anna, she has that
Anna was
moves twice. She do the invisibility thing. I love Anna. And I love my archers. Rudolph is great.
I
Uh,
didn't get Rudolph. That he
Rudolph, Huet is
yes.
great. Um, I
Hewitt
don't.
has won me
This may be a
battles.
this may be a spoiler for you, but I like Maxwell.
Oh, Maxwell comes. The God Spear returns. I had a strange feeling. I'm like, y'all holding on to this character story a little too much for you to have dropped it so early.
So Archibald was my favorite, but it's like
Yeah,
at times I can't get over his movement.
yeah.
So this is why Benedict is my number one favorite because he makes people like Archibald a lot better.
Mm.
Speed and movement. I'm looking at it again. I mean, I love Frederica because she has some crazy magic abilities with the fire and stuff. I didn't get the character that has uses like pyro. I mean, not pyro, but ice magic.
Oh, you didn't get. Yeah, that's. I forgot his name, but I think it's Kervin or something like that. Yeah, I'm the ice guy.
And then Eridor is just great because he's a
Yeah.
tank.
Oh, he,
Yo, when a lot of times I do the strategy where I bunch my characters together,
yeah.
and Eridor has provoke.
Yes.
Everybody's going to him, and then when he's going out, then I use Gila to heal him,
Yeah.
and it just keeps and I just massacre everybody around when Eridor is taking on the hits. It's perfect.
Yeah, no, Eridor as I think that's one of the things that is a detriment, but it's also the interesting thing about this game. You don't get real many duplicates of of a utility. Like
Unless yeah.
I'll say that again.
I thought you were talking about you say utility, but I was gonna say that you get a lot of duplicates with archers because there are a lot of like
Yes.
overlap with archers like Hewitt and I think Archibald is probably the most unique one. And
Yes.
then the fighter class in here is like really doesn't get a lot of love. I have Groma, she's a brawler, but yeah.
No, I mean, so did you use the blacksmith? The blacksmith was one of my favorite guys.
Blacksmith is that's not Flanagan, not Flanagan. Is that Julio?
No, Julio is the guy who restores TP with a sword. He has
Oh
glasses.
yeah, I love him. He's great.
That's what I said. I knew you'd like Julio because I think he's as effective as Benedict for how you sound like you play the game.
Oh, you're talking about gens, right?
Yes,
I
that
like in certain levels when you need to get somewhere quick, that ladder is clutch.
the ladder is clutch, but I honestly the thing because I've been struggling strategy wise, and this is something I want us to go into. The being able to play around with the spring traps and try to predict enemy movement to see if they'll walk into the spring traps and throw them back and take advantage of that. It's been one of my favorite things. But I just wish he was just a little bit more strong. I feel like the one thing that bothers me about, and I think this ties into your Roland conversation, is that Roland is the best damage effective unit. Nobody comes close.
Roland's the second best archer in the game.
I mean, you're not wrong. I think that's why I'm like the fact that Sarah Noah is the
Let me
best.
say Noah, not
Yeah,
Roland.
yeah. Sorry, Sarah Noah is the best damaging unit in the game. Roland doesn't compare. Eridor doesn't. Nobody compares. And you would think that they would have attached some attacking strength to somebody else. It leads to me. So I think it leads to strategies like yours where you're using Eridor because he has great defense, and then you might be mowing down people with Sereno.
Yeah, and
And
then
I've
or
noticed,
even like gathering a bunch of enemy units in one spot and then just burning them to pieces with Frederica.
well,
And
that's the thing I'll say. This is where I'm curious how good your strategy per eye is because I realize this is where it's like my strategy eye isn't as good as I thought it'd be. This game sold me. I remember the trailer, but I first saw the magic synergies where it's like, oh, you can melt the ice into puddles and do the lightning on top of it. And so I was like, oh, the magic is so dynamic. But I realized because of how TP works in this game and how long it takes to rebuild the ability to do certain magic, I don't ever get to have those synergies.
well, one
And
thing I will say is that if you ever play this again,
yeah.
you pair Rudolph with gens.
Mm,
They have like that's gonna be helpful. But like when I don't know if you have her name is Izana. She's a shaman. So you
yeah,
pair
I haven't used her much,
Izana,
but yes.
use Izana with what's the goofy guy Narv, and
Yes.
then with Puerto Rico, like that seems like a because they have different elemental magic.
Right. Exactly.
And then Azana, if I look up her stuff, she actually can do Rite of Lightning and Rite of Wind, so she can
Yes.
change the terrain and stuff like that. Rite of Rain, like she's like really good if you want to like do those type of combos in a way.
And I feel like I just didn't exploit them as much. Did you end up doing that? I think the best version of seeing that was in chapter 14, which is the one I think I just beat, where you're on the boat and you what's the name of the sister of Frederico? One of the sisters of Frederico was throwing oil all over the place so she could burn me with her pyrokinesis. And so
Yeah.
you see how the enemies are really using the environment and items and the synergy of magic on top of that. I was also the first place where I noticed you can. I didn't know that metal would conduct electricity in this game because I'm like, when else would I have noticed that? When I use Narv to do electricity, and I was like, wait, entire portion of the boat that's all metal rimmed goes up in electricity. I'm like, why? I feel like there's so much more to do with this magic stuff, and maybe, as I said, I might not have been creative enough to take advantage.
And so I think that goes into a question of like, how do you play? Because when I play, like if I'm playing, and we talked about this, if I'm playing Fire Emblem and I'm like on maddening level or something like that, or hard, my strategy is to send somebody out and then provoke the enemies that way, and then run him back in, run
Mm,
that character back in, and then circle the enemy, and then murder them. And that works until I get to the final level, and then I have to actually change my strategy. Because the big bosses aren't going to chase you,
yes.
like what else?
That
But
actually that actually leads it. Do you prefer when bosses are in one place and then you can like build strategy around that, or do you prefer where the bosses are consistently moving and you have to really react to them? I realize that's the one thing I liked about Fire Emblem time to time because they still make the bosses feel threatening because they're so powerful, and so the stationary doesn't make them feel weak. But in Triangle Strategy, I'm like, golly, having these super HP sponges with their supports around them consistently moving makes them so difficult to work with. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to
but
figure
that's
it out, but it makes it so difficult.
yeah, and that's the fun thing about it. What I hate in all strategy games, and I haven't played Tactics Advanced since I
Mm-hmm.
was like in eighth grade or something, 32.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I hate reinforcements. Reinforcements feels like when you playing like red and silver or some Elite Four battle, and you're near the end, and they use a full restore.
Yes. Yes, that.
And I hate how when the reinforcements can spawn right behind you. I I I hate that with a passion. I love when a boss is like he's coming after you, or they're coming after you. I hate reinforcements.
I I I'll say this. This is my most unpopular Fire. I the only one of the few reasons why I don't think I liked Fire Emblem Awakening like I should have is that it is the most reinforcement heavy game I've played. It uses it more than Fates, it uses it more than Shadows of Valentia, uses it more than Seven, and it is so aggravating. Because what it does is that now that you have to like make decisions on the fly, which is cool, but now if you mess up, it wasn't because that you failed at your strategy, it's because they threw an entire wrench into your strategy so late into it when you might have lost certain units or been in the wrong position. It's so like now you when I replay those levels, I'm making decisions to get to that point, and then I have to now make decisions to prepare me for that point. If you're going to give me reinforcements, do them early into the mission because at least it feels like I'm putting a natural flow. If you do it at the end, which is where I think Awakening does a lot, it's aggravating. At least when they do reinforcements here in Triangle Strategy, it is it's not really difficult enemies, which I think is important. Sometimes in Awakening, it felt like they'd throw like a berserker at you. You're like, bro, I do not have my people are further away. Or it's like you need to wrap up and get rid of these things. It's almost an incentive to finish faster. At least that's how I feel when I play this game. Most of the in reinforcements are you dealt with the worst of it already. I feel like in Fire Emblem Awakening, it's like you have the worst at it at the end, and we're gonna add more difficulty on top of that.
Yeah, one thing I really love though about triangle strategy when you compare it to these other high fantasy strategy games is that this is seems like a lower fantasy in a
Yes.
way. Fire Emblem, like the older ones, they had a dragon god Naga and all this stuff, and then like even in Three Houses, you have these corrupted beasts and things like that. There's a magic system here, but it's a grounded magic system.
Yes.
This sounds stupid because it's fantasy, but this seems like a more believable way
Yes.
of doing this. So, but the reinforcements, it, they, I don't think, I think the reinforcements have to be calculated into your strategy. It's something that you probably won't get until like, sorry, joking.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't get into like your second or third run. Like I know on this turn, probably going to have reinforcements. So,
Right.
hey, who can mow down units quicker? And a lot of times this happened. Sarah Noah stayed around because Sarah Noah had to guard my back,
Right.
and then there you go. Or who can I have tank these units that are going to be the reinforcements that are going to come over here? Eridor.
Yes.
Boom, 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 boom. You protect. I didn't have many healers. I had Gila and I had the horse person.
Oh, you did you see? Did you end up using? So you didn't use the apothecary? I forgot her name. Scientist.
I used her later. Medina, she was really
Yeah.
good, but she was like a weird healer. I feel like, sorry, real quick. I feel like I feel like it just wasn't unique to me. They can, because it wasn't nothing that they provided on their own. It was based off of what I had in my, story.
Yeah. That's so we'll lean into one of my key issues with this game. I think item management, because I don't mind that they mitigated weapon development. I think you wanted to talk about weapons next. So we'll talk about the weapon development. But for a game that can force you to be reliant on items, the inventory it's sparse. Every time I spend money, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna be broke. And so I don't ever feel like, oh, let me make sure I stock up on HP stuff because I'm like, there's a limited amount. Like, well, there's 24. If you buy more than 24, you're screwed. And so I felt that the way that they do inventory in this game doesn't do the her was it Mina? Uh
Medina.
Medina any use versus I think in a Fire Emblem game you drowning in vulneraries by mid game, so it's not if you had a mixer, I could see that being effective in terms of long range throwing and stuff like that.
I mean, but like when you have enough, item, you have the right items that really affect. Even as an attacker,
Mm.
you use certain offensive items, and I used her a lot during the end levels because one of my issues is that this doesn't really have that many good healers.
No, not at all.
Yeah, Gila. Oh my God.
You we have Gila. You were mentioning the other unit on the horse, uh, and I think that's it. I think
Narv can heal.
yeah, Narv can heal. That's part of the reason why I used Narv for so long because you had can what is it called, Sanctuary as the effective thing. I it makes me wish you could attach magic to other people a little bit. Like, and maybe this would have been OP, but if you could have attached one magic thing, and maybe you just limit it to one magic, attach a magic thing to support people like Benedict, or attach a magic thing to Julio, just to give him an additional piece of utility. Uh, and maybe this game doesn't feel like it needs healers, but I think the enemies are so they, yeah, they're so spongy that I'm like, nah, you need additional healers. I do find it cool that you don't really have. Well, yeah, no, I think now I'm more talking about it. I think that is something that they should have thought leaned into of allowing you to add these effects onto support characters. So maybe none of the melee characters, but even some. You know who I was looking at? I was looking at the stats for Hewitt. Hewitt's magic attack is crazy, and I'm like, I can't even use that. Like, why have her grow in that if she can't use that? If there's no way for her to use that, because it doesn't even. What would have been cool is that even if go back to the items, because you can get like the magic lightning and the ranged lightning and stuff like that. The fact that her magic stats don't affect that is whack.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it now. Like you funny you bring up the stats, but it's like the promotion system is really limiting. Like
Yes.
it's just really weird. It's like if I'm looking at the second healer, which is oh, I'm sorry,
No worries.
Asabara, she's a mountain healer, so she great. attack. Well, good, no, good, solid attack. Good range. You know, she can move around, and she's a healer. But you know, when you look at the weapons, she uses like this a staff. Like if you're, I'm used to mounting units. They can use a lance, um, a sword, an axe. You know, it would that has a little bit of diversity and versatility, and that would have been really good. You know, when I look at when you look at someone like a Narv or whatever, the same thing is there, and it's just like what like why is this such an issue? Somebody who would have been a great healer, honestly, is Anna.
Yes,
So
that would have
fast,
been a great component to add.
like but I think also that's a good thing in certain characters because we go back to Benedict, the best character in the game is that he has no healing ability. He
Right,
has he uses a staff, a cane actually,
right.
a butterfly rod if you get it up to the rank 3, and that does decent damage. But I'm like, there are certain times I didn't deploy Benedict because I knew I could blitz through something without
Yeah.
his help.
And I think that's the challenging thing, making units so one unidimensional, so to speak, allows you to come up with unique strategies, right? I don't think we would have looked at Benedict the same way if he had a healing option, because we might have just relied on his healing more than the other tools that he provides. But at times, and maybe it's just one of those things where we carry wrong frameworks into games, right? Like, so I always think about it, like if you're playing an RPG in one way and another RPG is asking you to play it in a different way, it's it's not always that the new game is asking of the wrong thing of you. It's like you need to change your perspective. But I think that's the thing with triangle strategy. Sometimes I can't tell, is it that I'm carrying the Fire Emblem framework here, or am I carrying the Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced framework here, and that's why this is an issue, or is this an issue on the game in of itself?
I,
And
yeah, I think though with triangle strategy, you probably taking away more of the Final Fantasy because
mm,
Square Enix but it plays like it away, and this plays nothing like Banner Saga,
mm,
Advanced
oh,
Wars,
mm,
Fire Emblem. The only thing that ties them in with Fire Emblem are like to me are like the paralogs, but
yep.
you know one thing they do better than Fire Emblem with the paralogs is that it doesn't become like this waifu simulator, and I'm with Awakening, I was like, oh, because that was part of the Awakening story. Because you
Yeah.
have to have kids and the second part. In Three Houses, why? It's okay. Or they got married, that's cool, but like if it's not like Awakening or Genealogy of the Holy War, this really doesn't matter. Because in Genealogy of the Holy War, who you decided to marry was detrimental or beneficial to your next, the next chapter, the next part of the game, because those stats would have been terrible. Like, damn, that sounds like eugenics.
I mean, we can get into what that's kind of implicit of what happens in some of those games.
Damn.
I I don't know how I feel about the romance or relationship building in Fire Emblem. I think in one hand, and I don't know how you felt. I remember playing Fire Emblem 7 or Sacred Stones, feeling like these supports, the small support dialogues were rare to happen on a playthrough. I'm like, oh, I got a level C, and that might be it for the entire game, but again, I don't get nothing else.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and,
you have to be okay with that.
and I was fine with that, but I understand that by having different people talk to each other, both in terms of fleshing out character stories and you being able to deliberately see how people interact, even beyond just the people have this idea about relationships. I think that's compelling. I do think the fact that people can get together makes when you lose somebody of like, oh, not only did you lose a unit, not only did you lose a character you like, but you lost the relationship building. Like, and so I was like, I think I'm a little bit more nuanced to how I feel about it. I'm not out here defending where Fates was taking some of this conversation. I wouldn't do that. But I also feel like the relationship is impactful. I will say, and this is my proof of like back and forth about it. I didn't buy Three Houses originally, partially because I didn't really find that like that stuff is cool, but I don't know if that could work as the main draw for me. That's why I'm more interested in playing Engage and Free Houses, but I know
No,
that's
Engage is terrible. I said I would play it if you bought it, but I'm not buying that.
so even if I get it, you're not buying it.
Three houses is three houses. You know, you like to talk about mental health. Now. It goes in there. Characters break. They break down. It's not like a you know that support stuff is good for like building up stats on the field, but also
Yeah.
oh this character married this person, but it doesn't do anything to the gameplay. It's not
Right.
like Awakening. It's not like Genealogy.
Oh, okay.
So like there's a time skip, but like shit has gotten bad in that time. Like they're at war. Like this three houses is amazing. That
You've convinced me that I should get it before Engage. I will say that.
but one thing I ask you since we keep going back, it is hard not to talk about tactics and not talk about Fire Emblem.
Yes.
Does triangle strategy need permadeath? Because all we get in here when people die, except for when Roland's dad got beheaded, you get a lot of pump
I,
fake.
I, I think so. I actually, it would be, they would have to change a lot of the game to really work with that. And I like that I can be a little bit more reckless. One of the things that happens in my matches a lot is that I lose. I sometimes have to do a map 3 or 4 times, partially to get certain the XP to stack up because sometimes I'm behind on that. But I also feel that you learn a lot. But I feel like that approach would not be conducive to permadeath, and I don't think any tactics game has done. Oh, I'm lying. So you remember in Tactics Advance, there are certain locations that have permadeath, if you remember.
Yeah.
And so they have played around with it in that style of game. I think I think going back to the phrase you use the word grounded for this game. If you want to ground this game in this manner and format, permadeath would really enhance it. Like if you were to do a triangle strategy 2 or hexagon strategy, if they want to go play around with that, uh, I think permadeath would give it a good wrinkle for the types of story it might want to tell.
Yeah, and it's funny when you made that hexagon joke. It kind of dawned on me that Sarah Noah isn't the main character at all.
Yep.
He's not a part of that triangle.
He's not.
But I think that I really think like when I go back to Banner Saga, character's death is based off your decisions, but it's not always based off of your decisions in a certain battle,
Right.
based off of dialogue. And
Mm.
so that's creative. I would like to see that. Like because
You think that'd be more effective in general? Maybe I guess that works with the decisions. That would actually synergize well. Yeah.
because when I was watching a video the other night about a Fire Emblem game. How they used to do it was that if a character dies like a certain amount of times, like 5 or 3 times or whatever, something like that, then they're actually dead. Like you can go down in the
Oh,
battle and survive,
I
but
like
like
that's a good approach too. You've given
they
me
don't do
some
that
just
anymore.
that is insightful. That you've given me some other ways because I think I like you and we've both built by what Fire Emblem has like framed us taste wise. But I think what you highlighted, Banner Saga, I think would work here. Like imagine the way that you vote or some of the things you say in a vote would be, oh well, man, if you're making these decisions against Benedict, you can go lose him.
Yeah, and it's like also it's like outside, like let's say you go to vote and Benedict or whatever character just did something really heinous, like Benedict setting the villages on fire, and you know, the, what do they call that in these feudal times? Vassal wings or
Yes.
whatever. They were like, "Yo, we need you to send Benedict to he needs to be hung or beheaded or something,"
Yes.
and you have to vote on that.
That
And like that right there is crazy. Like you need that actually takes away one of the paths already. you know,
yeah, I like this. I like some of where you're going. I guess so that I have wondered what else do you do with this decision making, but I think you're highlighting it. I think if we're going to have dialogue play out in this way, and this ties into something I'm curious how you felt. One of the things I liked about the voting system in this game is that you cannot just go out into the town, get the information, and then use the information to persuade everyone in the same way. You really have to think, okay, what does Eridor care about? What does Eridor value? Because so you might use the unlocked option with him, but it might not actually be effective. Because that's one of the things I noticed in my early playthrough. I was like, oh, if I see the unlocked dialogue tree, that means it's always going to work. And it's like, no, it's not always going to work. You really have to, like, Hewitt values her loyalty to Roland. So you have to really think about decisions that will persuade her. Eridor cares about morality, but he also cares about the House of Wolford almost equally. So you have to finesse people. It's one of the things that about the voting system in this game. It felt like I was really working with humans. I couldn't always spam, oh, I figured out the core information. Some of that works for some people, but I noticed later on as time goes on when I'm trying to push people certain ways, I am now dealing with the fact of no, what really matters to Benedict? If I speak to Benedict, I know that he's a shrewd person willing to sacrifice. So if I'm not talking his language, he ain't gonna be talking to me.
Yeah, like 9 times out of 10, I knew I was gonna have Eridor and Anna.
Mm.
You know something. You know, like, but one thing though is that what triangle strategy didn't do is how, and they did it like at the very end when you had to pick what path or whatever.
Right.
But between chapters and early on and middle part of the game like that, these decisions, like if you are somebody and you pick a decision, we go with it, and I'm like, that's not the right one. It's going to be some tension between you and I.
Oh, that's a great
There
point.
was no tension because like, oh, we have this democratic process and things. No, there's tension in that. You know, tension in democracy. And it's funny because they're playing with democracy and a system that's like, you know, feudal era monarchs and things like that. They're flirting with. But there still should be tension between characters. Like, yo, don't fuck with you like that. I don't even want you next to me when we battle or we fighting. You know,
Yeah.
like there has to be, you know, like certain characters get a boost when they're next to each other, I think. But like based on certain decisions, there should be no type of
No.
effect like that. You know, and like that should be because how many times has, you know, Eridor and like, yo, Benedict, you kind of wilding,
Yes.
you know, like, you know,
It's interesting because I do think you face. I look at the 7 people that are always voting, right? Like our core story cast. 50% of them know each other well. 50% don't know each other at all. And so there is an opportunity for relationships to strain through decision making or relationships between people. Because my brain is thinking, what is it? Anna, Eridor, Benedict, Roland are all House of Wolford people. Uh, then you have Frederica, Gila, and who else is on from Esfrost? Is there anybody else from Esfrost I'm not thinking about?
I'm not
Dark
Esfrost. Well, it is Frederica and Gila came from Esfrost.
Esfrost, but
So
they're
they're like, but her loyalty is not with Esfrost at
right.
all. It's
Yeah,
more
yeah,
so with the Rosellian,
yeah.
but part of like Wolford. But that's another issue. Like you have someone like Archibald who came from Heisen.
Yeah.
Like there should be times, maybe there's like a rotating one, or like
Yeah.
people should be able to vote in the process and things like that. Like we're really trying to democratize this.
No, because I think there's so much potential. Because you know what got me excited as an example of when they broke their own rules? The decision that was the first time where they had 3 decisions. The one where it was what is it? Encircle the crown town, flood the crown town, going through the back. I don't know if you remember that decision. And I was like, oh,
No,
that's the
go ahead.
first that's the first time they have 3. And it's now you're seeing allegiances change very differently because it's typically 3-3 in the way that you understood people. But it's the first time you see 2-2-2 in many different formats. And I was like, this is a perfect time where, yeah, maybe the person from Heisnat wants to say something different. Even side note, the I don't think I can recruit her, but she was a part of my battle. The dancer slash moon jumper. I forgot her name. She has this thing called Green Mist. She was incredible. She was jumping all over the map.
Oh yeah, she's great. I have her. Her name is Dang, where's her name?
What is
It's
her
not
name?
Zana. Zana's not the moon jumper.
Yeah,
No, it's oh yeah, it's Milo.
me. Just want to
She's
say, she's a unique unit. I've never really seen anything like her that can jump around the map.
XTP. She's
Yeah,
she's she's amazing.
yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. But I think it leads to what you're saying. I think if this game is going to come back and continue to lean into these decisions, they should play around with even just changing who gets to vote. I think that might be a small enough wrinkle. Like maybe the tensions might be difficult, but I think you're right. Archibald should be there when you're doing some of the stuff in Heisand. There's no reason why not.
And and I'm looking at Milo now, like her moves, evade detection. She can pass enemies and obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
Heart Stiller, she can tempt you so she can flip you. Moon jump, she could jump to a certain square and then use another move. Um, that's passive. Blue Knight, lower enemy strength and magic attack for 3 turns and steal their TP. And then Green Mist, which is non-elemental magic. Like she's up there with she has so much like use, like she can slip. She'll be good to pair with Anna.
Yes.
So they have the ability to jump and move around and or a flyer.
Yep. I mean, I think if you talk about the best thing this game has contributed, and I think it's like, if you ask me, in addition to the decision making, the most powerful thing about this game is the most unique units we've ever seen. This doesn't, because it's so different than Fire Emblem or even Final Fantasy Tactics, or even I'm going to go into the Breach or whatever. I feel like we're getting unique units. I cherish that about this game. Any game that can give me something I haven't seen before or played differently before, I think deserves a lot of credit. But yeah, sorry. I know that we were down a different rabbit hole before we got into bringing up Milo.
No, it's well, yeah, Milo's great, but the character that I probably would spend some time trying to build up just to play with once is people consider like with a game like um Triangle Strategy. This type of character is a game breaker, and I don't know how to really pronounce it. Qualhog, Hugh, or something like that.
Quahog, yeah.
Yeah, they're like a psychic, and so it's kind of like if Doctor Manhattan was in Triangle Strategy, and so
Intense.
I want to be able to play with a character like that. Then it's like this machine, it's like this robot you can play with.
Yeah.
And like I haven't, and I feel like I didn't play the game right, which is weird when this game can be played multiple ways because I want to recruit these type of characters, like the pirate's daughter and father.
Yep.
You can recruit them.
I
I
did
have,
not know that. That is okay. Okay. That's a game. Damn. Damn.
I haven't recruited them, so I have man 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 22 units.
Mm, that, that's a good amount.
But
So
the units that I really, really want, though.
so I guess with all of this being said, I don't know if there are any closing things you want to say, but my main three things would I say? Would you play a triangle strategy too? Like if it was hexagon, octagon strategy, like are you there early into that?
I never played some shit like Octopath Travel. That was terrible.
Sorry. Yes, but
I would definitely play Triangle Strategy again. Well, a two, a sequel.
yeah,
I'll play if it. Some of the things that I would like to see implemented. I'm day one.
yeah.
You know, I would play this before whatever hell intelligent systems is doing with Fire Emblem.
So you're gonna play this over the genealogy of the Holy War remake, is what I'm
Oh
hearing.
no, no, no! But over Engage, yeah.
But you have specific beef with Engage. I don't think you know what. Well, let's get into that very shortly. Because I have a whole section here about thinking tactically and focus. No, we are both built by the Fire Emblem house. What is why is a levity a light story a default negative in this game? Because don't get wrong, we spent we've championed triangle strategy story. We place it on a pedestal. I think if you ask regular folks, they'll even put the original Final Fantasy Tactics in that space where they love grounded fantasy.
Look,
And
look at Flanagan. Just look at how Flanagan looks.
he looks
Look at
fire.
that. He
Yeah,
looks like. But then go look at one of the characters from Engage.
they look fire. What you talking about?
No, they look like fucking
What's,
anime characters.
what's
Look
wrong with
at
them?
wow, look at that. Look at that.
Yes.
No, like the character designs have fallen off in Fire Emblem. You about to go play Fire Emblem, the first one that came to the States, and you're like, damn, these character designs are amazing. Then it gets real cartoonish. Then it gets real light and bright. Then it gets real anime. And Three Houses have a little bit of that, but then when shit got cracking, they're like, it went back to the roots. Like, why the fuck do I have a motherfucker with red? Sorry, I'm cursing. I don't know. Why do they have a person with red and blue hair? It's all bright. It looks like, and I love slice of life anime. Some of it, a lot
Yeah,
of it.
you put me on to Kotaro lives at home.
Yeah, but that gets dark though. But it's great. It's like it feels.
But all right, let me ask you.
Not Fire Emblem. It feels like we making a lot of money off Fire Emblem heroes, but you know what? I'm 32, bro, and I realized that this is probably for kids.
I don't even think it's that. And this is how I really feel about Fire Emblem. I think it's gonna cycle, right? Because here's what's gonna happen. This is where my brain is at. I remember we had during the Awakening Fates era. There's a lot of this conversation going on, and then they dropped Shadows of Valentia, which is a very grounded take. They went back to the old school. The art looks great. Like my girl Celica is fire. That's a fire design. And it's really grounded. It's more neutral because that's what Gaiden was. And then people were like, oh, I wish every Fire Emblem would be like this. And I'm like, no, I want Fire Emblem to be both. I want Fire Emblem games that are going to be grounded, more mature. I can enjoy that. But I do not mind, especially for what is supposed to be a celebration game in Engage. I'm like, I mean,
it's a weak ass celebration. I'm sorry. Like when you coming off the hills, when you coming hard off the hills of something like Three Houses that really like shook the gaming world, like in the way that it felt. And like I'm big on backstabbing. I'm big on intrigue and mystery and real like children were being mutilated in for science in this game and people having grudges and taking over countries. Like it was the closest I'm going to get to a Game of Thrones game.
But I think you get it again. Like I feel like sometimes when people like you talk, you think that this Engage is where it's gonna go, and I'm like, no. I know what Engage. You know, I know what Engage is. Engage is like a frolic and a fun frolic, and especially if. So, as a person who hasn't played either, right? I haven't played Engage or Three Houses. The critique that I've heard of Three Houses is that mechanically it isn't very deep. But everything else is so fantastic at an S tier level that it doesn't matter that it is kind of average as a tactical game, which I think can work. I don't think that's inherently negative or anything. It sounds like Engage is very much the flip of like the story is so basic, it is so straightforward, it is so characters are very unidimensional, but mechanically it has some cool things going on, and I feel like I get it. We want a game that's the best of both worlds. I think that's ultimately what we want. We want a game that has these deep, engaging stories, no pun intended, and with the strong combat that we know we love Fire Emblem for. But I also think that I love that this is a series that can cycle. I love that this is a series that can have different focuses. And maybe I'll ask you this. When the Fire Emblem schism happened around Awakening, what did you feel? Because I remember that conversation, and it was very contested. And as a person who was like, yo, this series is dead. Like, I was ready to like live my life the way I live with Golden Sun being dead. I was ready. I know what that life is like. I was looking at Fire Emblem that way. But I'm curious, when you had that schism where they said Fire Emblem Awakenings to anime, when there's all these other things, did you feel that?
Well, like, what was that, like 2013 or something like that?
Yeah, 2013, yeah.
I just graduated from out of undergrad, and I had no idea that Fire Emblem, this was going to be a make or break game for Fire Emblem. And that should tell you something. The only games I played in college were 2K and Halo. I didn't have time for those type of games. Well, I played Black and White and stuff like that. Right. But I didn't have time for a game like that. And so I was under the impression that they had been releasing a lot of games, you know. And when I went to GameStop, I moved back home to Chicago, and they're like, "Oh, there's Fire Emblem Awakening." I'm like, "Shit, I love Fire Emblem." Like, let me get this. And I'm like, "Oh, this is great." I'm like, they changed some things. It's not as where it was when I was like in high school or whatever, but I didn't think that this was a make or break game for Fire Emblem. I didn't know there was this big schism or whatever. But at that time, I was like, oh, after reading about it, oh, you wanted to bring in a new artist, you want to bring different core gameplay and all that stuff, so it worked. But it seems like that's all what it is now, and it's kind of like being me playing Pokemon since I was in the third grade.
Yep.
And you see how red and blue and yellow and gold, silver, and crystal play with these dark mechanics. Even Ruby and
Ruby
Sapphire had
Sapphire.
the environmental components and all that stuff, but like it's not the same Pokemon game as anymore. But again, I can't be this type of guy who's looking at my son like, oh, Pokemon's trash because it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the core audience anymore. But I feel like Fire Emblem has always been a little bit more mature than
Yes, 100%.
Pokemon. So when I made that joke, it wasn't really a joke, and it wasn't even my joke. It was something I saw in the YouTube comments. Is Fire Emblem or intelligent systems, or whatever, failed to engage with their core audience. Like this, it was a celebration game. If you want to celebrate Fire Emblem, release Genealogy.
I mean, but we know that's in the, like, that's the thing to me. It's inevitable. That, I think that's where I'm at with it. It's like, I get Engage is not people's preference. As I said, I don't own it yet. I intend to, but I don't think Engage is what the future of Fire Emblem will be. And I think is the lingering thought in a lot of this conversation. It's like, oh man, after Three Houses, they dropped the ball. We'll never get something. And I'm like, no, I think y'all go get it again, because they know that Three Houses is prestige. Like, even if Engage sold well, the answer is Three Houses is the prestige title that really took over the audience. And so we have to feed that audience again.
I mean, I get it and I believe it because even after Awakening, they dropped, Fates.
Yeah.
And like I told you, I didn't get I got Fates where it was like the samurais and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
so you and I got both Birthright. Birthright is great.
Birthright. And I still got it, but that was the easiest out of the two.
Yes.
And I didn't finish Birthright. The only reason why I got Birthright because of aesthetics. I was like, oh shit, a Fire Emblem, they got samurais and shit. I need this. But it was still terrible. But the
It's not
gameplay,
terrible. It's the best Fire Emblem game.
everybody said this is probably like top one gameplay, but it was just a terrible game.
Oh, I mean, it's a terrible story. It is one of the worst stories in the history of all.
Yeah, and it's like I can't, I can't get jiggy with this shit.
I mean, I think that goes back to you being a lore person, where I feel like it's harder for you to appreciate a game that doesn't have that of its core appeal, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you know me, like we talk about Gundam and stuff. I refuse to watch any Gundam that's not UC. And so you like, well, that doesn't make sense. If that's how you are, you should probably not play any Fire Emblem game that doesn't leave where those three continents where Marth and Nick Genealogy and Tracy are. I'm like, no, this is different because they still build up the lore in those certain aspects. And I mean, I did buy the new Gundam anime, the Witch from Mars.
Oh, which from Mercury? Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was I didn't know it was like a school drama, so I was more so into like murder and war. But okay, but I don't know. I'm not ending my claim as a Fire Emblem fan, but I'm more excited for what Triangle Strategy is going to come up with.
No, I'm with. I think I'm glad we are in a market again where we have multiple of these, right? I think I mentioned Field Chronicle. That was the game I was trying to remember from Square Enix last year. We're getting a variety of strategy games. I mean, I know you haven't played it, but it's on my radar of something to play, the Mario and Rabbids joints. I wouldn't be surprised if we wake up sometime next year and we see Valkyria Chronicles show up again. Like, and so I'm love that we are in the space where we're getting games with different tones, different approaches, and I just hope that we continue to get it. I don't want to go through I don't want to make fun of this group, but I'm gonna make a little bit fun. I don't want to be the cats who are like dying for F-Zero and Wipeout to come back. I don't want to be them cats who be like, yo, man.
Or Metroid or whatever.
But at least Metroid come back. Like at least if you were a Metroid fan, at least you had Hollow Knight. You had stuff in the drought. You at least had stuff. I feel like arcade racing fans be like, yo, if it's not fast racing RMX, you ain't been playing anything.
I mean, but also, bro, like you mentioned a game that you and I consider to be top 5 no matter the genre.
Yeah.
And that's Golden Sun.
Oh,
and I got Golden Sun. I got Golden Sun on the DS, I believe, and it wasn't good. I couldn't get through like 30 minutes of it. And maybe because I was playing, I just don't know what it was. And I was okay with that. I was okay with those memories.
Yeah.
And not playing, like not getting another Golden Sun. If a remake came out, oh hell yeah.
Yep.
I'm there.
But this is where I think why I'm like I like where strategy RPGs are. Where I think other RPGs have a much difficult thing. I've thought about this a lot, and so you tell me. I think Golden Sun can't come back. I don't think there's a space for a traditional turn-based RPG that emphasizes dungeons in the market. I hope to be wrong because I think its dungeons are the greatest thing that in the genre to me. Like it's my favorite. Ayers Rock is the greatest JRPG moment of my life.
I like being at the edge of the earth, like, they really.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And so, but I also wonder, people like the FF16 discourse, which I won't go fully into, has been about how do you sell a more traditional Japanese framed role-playing game to the masses. The answer is, at least Final Fantasy's answer is, be like The Witcher. That their answer is be like The Witcher with Devil May Cry gameplay. And I was like, I can't get mad at you. I get it. You trying to sell records. And then so when I go a tier below that, I'm like, Dragon Quest doesn't sell a lot. So I can't look and say like, oh, Golden Sun can learn from Dragon Quest. I'm like, I don't know if there's anything you could do to match that. And so now when you go to like Atelier Riser, which I'm hyped about to play, but I don't know you could sell like Joe Schmo who's playing the Starfield, yo, you know what you need to play next, Atelier Riser. I don't think that's gonna happen. No, so that's why I say about Golden Sun, what can it do?
I mean, I think, and this is off topic, but I just think we just need to live with our memories.
Yes.
And I'm okay with that. If I can ever get Golden Sun in like an anime, or whatever, I would love that, But I think like you don't remember being stuck on a certain level, not knowing I had to like build these ice pillars, and so I had to run to the library, look it up, look at a strategy guide, and it doesn't like Golden Sun was amazing, and it's just like I'm not getting that. What I would want to see in a genealogy remake, and that's the ADHD kick now. I instantly changed topics. Was I want more 2D HD. I need more 2D HD games. I want to see a 2D HD Pokemon. I want to see a 2D HD, Fire Emblem. I need this. I need that.
I think it's going to be hard for Fire Emblem. I don't know if we'll go back. I would love for us to go back. I think Pokemon will figure out that it has to do it once. Because I do think if they do it once, it's actually going to sell way more than they anticipate. Even if you decide to say it's going to look like gold and silver instead of like black and white, I think people would erupt. I think
both look beautiful. Black and white, gold and silver and crystal are my favorite generation, but black and white and black and white too. That's the best a Pokemon game has ever looked.
Yeah. So I think Pokemon will do it. I don't think Fire Emblem will do it because I don't know if there's enough nostalgia for 7 and 8 pixels. I think any Fire Emblem fan, I think, talks about how amazing animations are, and they are. I booted it up this week, and I was just like, golly, this is gorgeous. But I don't think
you're talking about 7?
Yeah, I'm talking about 7. I was like, Lynn's critical animations, Florina's critical, like all the critical.
Oh, when Lynn gets the sword.
Yeah. It is beautiful, but I also don't know.
I'm downloading it now. I had to get my stuff. I'm downloading it now.
Yes, you got to do that. We'll talk about that next time. Next time I'll have you on here because I've been going through it. We'll talk about it. But I'm gonna wrap up with I guess both just, are you going to try what are you going to try next? Are you going to try Diofield Chronicles? Are you going to try Tactics Ogre Reborn? Uh, where now that you've had your fill with Triangle Strategy, now that I know you're not playing Fire Emblem until the Genealogy Holy War remake,
I mean,
uh,
I'm playing 7. I'm the hell on 7
you're
right
going
now.
to do 7. But are you going to give Diofield a try? Or are you going to give Valkyrie Chronicles a try? Or are you going to give?
Tried. I tried. Is that the one that's set in like World War II or
Yes,
whatever?
yes, yes, yes,
I
yes.
tried that. I didn't like that shit.
No.
No, no.
Okay,
It
okay.
would. It didn't. I needed swords. I needed that. But no. I've been doing a lot of research. We talked about Tactics Ogre
Yeah.
and looking into that. And I guess this is where I become like a snob. Like I think that their graphics are still a little too dated for me.
Really?
Way and I'm like, yo, Triangle Strategy is a 9.5 out of 10.
Oh, I
And
people have
I'm
critiqued people critique this graphics all the time, and I'm like, bro, this is stunning to me.
like Fire Emblem I mean, Triangle Strategy is 9.5 out of 10.
Mm.
And the best tactics game I've played since 2015, Banner Saga, Three Houses, Triangle Strategy.
Yes.
And Ogres is a like a remake or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's a remake of a remake, and
Yeah,
it's
I feel like the guy who created Fire Emblem ended up leaving Nintendo
yeah. He I
because of
forgot what
certain
he.
shit.
I
Ten
think
Ring Saga or something like that.
yes, Tearing Saga, and I think. Oh, have you peeped Dark Deity? That's another one that a lot of the Fire Emblem fan base have been talking about.
No, but another thing about me is that I don't want to play.
Some
Like, remember I talked about a Steam Deck. I get a Steam Deck
right,
and I can get that on there, but I don't want to play a strategy game on my TV. I don't want to do it on my PS or
right.
my
You want to do it in your handheld.
like. I did some stuff with Three Houses on the TV late at night. I'm like, this is good because
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I'm a snob in a way. I can admit that. And I know what I want, so I'm okay with that.
So a 9.5 is your rating of it. I think so. I'm not close to done yet. As I said, I'm on chapter 14. If you ask me, I'm in between an 8 and a 9. I think some of the flaws are starting to like seep into my brain a little bit. And so there's a time if you spoke to me earlier playing, I would have said this is about to be a game that breaks my top 15 games I've ever played. I'm not sure yet. I'm open to it still, but I've tempered my love for the game a little bit. I've tempered my love.
I would think that it's so funny because I remember last year we were talking like you're on chapter 10 or something like that. And the
Mm.
only reason why I ran through the game
Yeah,
as fast was to catch up with you.
yeah. You blitz me, but that's what happens when I end up shifting my focus over the last year. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
that.
you had the dissertation and stuff like that. And I was planning when I was supposed to be studying for comps.
That's what I was afraid of this year. Like very short side note, Triangle Strategy and Xenoblade 3 were being played so much at one point in my life where when Xenoblade 3 dropped, I put in 25 hours in like 3 days. I was addicted. I was like, I need to finish my dissertation and I can't do this. So I've not touched it. Going back to Triangle Strategy now has been like a refresher of like, oh, I remember why I love this. And so there's there's that. Now, as we get ready to close, I I'll have you mention a song. So we met as I highlight every week. We talk about 3 songs that are incredible in JRPG history. Uh, Typically, I try to keep them Spotify focused. But you talked about something that your son was playing recently, and so I want to make a shout out to the soundtrack because I think it's special. And so you can bring up the song, and then we'll highlight some of the other ones that I want to bring up.
And it's funny to me because I hate it after you have red, I mean, gold, silver, and crystal, you have 16 badges, you got red in there and things like that. Ruby and Sapphire were a bit of a letdown. You
I
can
hear
read
that
you,
all the time, but
you can
that's
redo battles and stuff like the dude's person and her cameraman and all that stuff, but then it wasn't until Emerald when shit started popping. But heard my son, he draws a lot. He's in his room. and he's drawing. I hear this music, like, man, that sounds familiar. And I said, what the hell are you playing? And he showed me. I'm like, what do you know about this? And it, put me back into the space. Like, damn, man, like,
That Rushboro City music.
yeah, that Rustboro City. Uh, when you came into Rustboro City, it was like, damn, this was it. And it wasn't like everybody when people talk about like a lot of Pokemon songs, they talk about like the scary ones are the ones that change the moment. Like, oh
Mm.
shit, your HP is low, whatever. But like Rustboro City is so good, and I heard that like, man, this is when people always talk about restoring the feeling. Like Rustboro City almost restored the feeling for a little bit until I realized that Pokemon, I can't return to that.
Oh, that is so funny.
But
I,
that song is amazing.
the entire Ruby Sapphire Emerald soundtrack is special to me. I think I've my personal feelings I'll put out there, and I was gonna wait till another day to do, but I'll say I think Pokemon's music has never stepped up to be all time great until Ruby and Sapphire. I know people love Red and Blue soundtrack or even the Johto soundtrack. I don't think those soundtracks are that good. Ruby and Sapphire's trumpet fonts, like even the surfing music, is so iconic to me. Uh, and so yeah, when you mention Rustboro City, I'm thinking Little Rude. I'm thinking Marville City music. Like all, I think so highly of the soundtrack of that game. I
The,
don't
the
know.
thing is, the thing is that first and second gen had a lot of darkness in it.
Mhm.
People were dying. There were ghosts. There was mystery. The unknown artists of Lugia going on. Like, and then I think Ruby Sapphire came with like a pop of like color, and
Yes.
so the music reflected that, and that's what it was.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think that's. I'm glad your son knows some of the greatest JRPG music ever. Uh, I'm gonna mention probably two of. I'm gonna mention two songs. There are three, but since you brought up a third one, I'm gonna skip one. One that I'm gonna have you listen to later. I was sporadically trying to figure out what song can I play that's not that's actually on Spotify, right? I mentioned that that's it. You know what game I haven't played yet? Chained Echoes. I don't know if you've gotten to peep that yet. And I was like, you know what? Let me go listen to the soundtrack. My goodness, the guy's name is Eddie Marian Nucrio. This guy put his foot in his entire soundtrack, man. Like, there's a song called Rolling Fields, and it feels like if you told me that Xenoblade, this was a Xenoblade reference track, I would believe you. It's like it feels so much. There's an entire sound synths and strings that sound like Satoru Marsh. You have a percussion and woodwind instruments that feel like Makuna Woods. Like some of my favorite songs from the original Xenoblade soundtrack is all here. And to know that it was made by one guy for this retro vibed RPG, I was like, oh, these guys weren't playing because I started peeping some of the rest of that soundtrack. I'm like, I it's funny as when I think about all-time JRPG songs, I think of like obviously Secret of Mana, Earthbound. Like you go to the classic games that are like big, even though people love a lot of the indie games, right? Like I got into Transistor, stuff like that, even Cosmic Star Heroine. But I don't think of those soundtracks. This is the first soundtrack I've heard from an indie game where that's I think you could tell me, yo, this sits next to what Fire Emblem 7 soundtrack or whatever. Like it's that I would recommend you to give it a listen. I recommend the people who have not played Chain Echoes, like I haven't, just listen to the soundtrack. You can see, like, I was told that this game is a game I have to play, but this music makes me clear I have to touch it. I have to.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit different because, like, I would say a lot of tracks from Banner Saga, like I'm I can't realize how good something is unless I'm playing it. And
Oh,
like when I went back to Rustboro City, hearing that I'm cleaning up, I'm packing and all this stuff.
yeah.
I'm like, what is it? Like I was kind of transported back to the sixth grade. Like
Mm.
I reserved, Ruby, and I got you did that at GameStop. You got the coin and all that stuff, the Groudon coin, and I remember going to it. My son was in our game room, and I'm like, oh shit, I got transported back in time, and so I can't like listen to a track that I know is from a game without playing the game first. Like I
Uh,
can listen to Sonic 1 nonstop now because I played Sonic 1 a billion times. I played that game probably more than any game I've ever played outside of Red Dead Redemption 2. And so it's like I can listen to that music nonstop, and I can't because and the music has to be paired with the game that
mm,
I'm playing because there's feelings to that. There are
that
certain
that makes sense. I think for me, because of like my desire to make music and look for songs to sample, my brain is like, oh, let me see if I can flip this. Let me see if I can like make this into some hip hop joint. Especially like if anyone has listened to my very first project, what did I even call it? Fendrana Mist. I was sampling so much from the Xenoblade Chronicles X soundtrack. It's not even funny. Like I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I think I pulled some stuff from Fire Emblem on that soundtrack. Like because I have that focus, there's only one soundtrack I have not touched, but I refuse to touch until I play, and that's Xenoblade 2. Everybody who I know who's played Xenoblade 2 tells me that that's like better than the Xenoblade 1 soundtrack, which my brain cannot fathom. But if you're telling me that, I don't want to ruin it for myself without, as you said, the stories, the memories to tie to that. But every other soundtrack, I have no problem listening through because I'm like, it it doesn't change how I feel when I finally get to it. Like a perfect example is I've played the Chrono Trigger soundtrack so many times before I ever played Chrono Trigger. Doesn't make I feel like I still have the memories with certain songs on that soundtrack
it was
through
like
actual play.
yeah, it's kind of like when I was going through some of my Fire Emblem like collector's editions, and you're like, you don't want the CD? I'm like, hell no, you got the shit. Like I don't
Yes, I remember you say we have to talk about that, right? I
like
remember
because I
that.
don't I don't need those. I have the music in the game. It's gonna be played when I need it to be played. I I don't need the fucking CD. Like you can have this shit. Like I don't care.
That is so funny. I am I'm always looking, and maybe it's also like I just think my bias totally. I think JRPGs have the best music, period, in gaming. Like I think other genres come close. I think if you want to talk about platformers from Sonic and Mario, they put it up an incredible fight. But
I don't think they put up an incredible fight. I think they are the best. And I
oh
leave it at that. I think Rockstar with their games, Red Dead and Grand Theft Auto, are the best. I hate Madden. I was a NFL and ESPN 2K dude, but early Madden games put me onto some shit, some rock and punk rock that I even know I like. Like these games are up there. Like those early Madden games, what Rockstar does, platforms is still number one. I'm not that good at platformers,
oh yeah, no, I'm terrible at platformers, but
except for Mario 1, but they have the best music. Mario Super, oh my God. And I
I
hate Mario.
I I really do think JRPG is better though, man. Like I truly believe like the Chrono Trigger soundtrack is just bar for bar with Eddie Mario song, man. Like I hear what you're saying because you could even talk about DKC and what's the guy's name? David Wise. David Wise is incredible. Like aquatic ambiance. You could tell me that's the greatest song in gaming history, and I would believe you. Uh, but the Final Fantasy Prelude. Come on, man.
I think my bias comes because like when I hear Green Hill Zone from
Yes.
Sonic 1, it was nothing's beating that. Nothing,
What is the Final Fantasy Prelude is better than Green Hill Zone?
nothing, no, it's not. And it's like anything from Super Mario Bros. Like the first no, nothing's beating that. Like
Man,
these
I
like
think you take Zeal Castle, man.
nothing's beating those. Like I'm sorry, it's just like
Take half the Earthbound soundtrack, man. And again, that's how
and then we're ignoring the entire genre. Like what were fighters? What I don't, fighters. Like Street
fighters
Fighter.
are interesting because I know a lot of people love the SNK soundtracks. I mean, the Street Fighter stuff is dope. Obviously, we'll talk about Third Strike, but even if you want to go Capcom versus SNK to or Marvel versus Capcom, take you for a ride. Like, there's iconics. All genres have iconic music. It seems I'm surprised that you feel that the JRPGs
We're
don't.
gonna have to do a versus. That's all it
This
is.
you have spoken the so when I planned this podcast, one of the deepest goals has been to do a versus. And my original idea was to do soundtrack to soundtrack. So it'd be like Final Fantasy V versus Final Fantasy VI, or Fire Emblem Awakening versus, I don't know, Earthbound, whatever. But I think what you are making me think, maybe we should do a genre battle. Maybe that's what we should do, in terms of pick 10 of the best. And we might have to keep it decade oriented, but like best platformers in the 90s, 10 best songs from platformers in the 90s, 10 best songs from JRPGs in the 90s, something like that. If you want to do that, you might be the first person to do this with me on Twitch. I want to do this so badly. But I have one more song to add to this before we wrap up. Unless you want to jump in before I add this song.
No, I was gonna ask you something offline. Like, I didn't know I had to jump through all these hoops to download this Fire Emblem game. I hate Nintendo. Uh, but no, go ahead.
Uh, so the last song I'll mention for this week that stood out to me was the Atelier Ryza theme. Rest in peace to Sayaka Kanda. I didn't realize that she passed away, but I found that out in researching the song. And boy, when I heard this tune, it is that jazzy piano vibes. I'm not sure if any of y'all are familiar with the anime called Rose Garden. I don't know if you've peeped that yourself. Rose Garden takes place in New York City. The opening is this super jazzy thing, and I'm like, jazz piano stuff for anime stuff just be hitting. They be in a different bag when they get into that. I mean, especially like there's a repetitive percussion motif that involves hi hats and triangles. Like,
Especially when you do when you follow anime that I love that has that noir feel to it.
yep,
Like,
yep,
of
yep.
course, you're gonna look at someone like Bebop, but like the big O.
Big old bacchanal.
Yeah, it is like in my favorite genre, whether it's in comics, whether it's in movies, in anime, is noir. You know, crime noir, whatever. You know, it just and a lot of it has to do with the jazz
Yeah,
doomer feeling, the pianos and things like that, the way that the horns sound, you know, and
yeah.
so I would definitely peep that out
It,
only because those are the type of feelings I seek out a lot.
yeah, the thing with this one is that compared to like something that's a little bit like Big O and Bebop, where they're a little bit more true to jazz in terms of a little bit of dourness, a little bit of they're not all the way bright. This, because of the vocal singer, she's incredible. It is a bright opening song. Like you can tell that this feels like late 90s watching something with some jazzy tunes. I really dig it. There's a warm fading piano at the end that I'm just like, yo, I'm gonna sample that. Like that's my brain was already in that space. And so again, the Tell Your Riser theme by Sayaka Kondo, incredible tune. I'll add another song onto the playlist for later. Uh, it's a Tales of Vesperia theme. It's incredible. The bass of a piano that it plays is just spectacular. But we'll talk about Tales of Vesperia another time. Those are the songs, along with Rustboro City, that I think we'd agree being Hall of Fame caliber JRPG tunes. And I think on that note, that will end this week's menu combat. We, and quick again, thank you so much to Jeremiah for making time today for cussing out Sarah Noah.
I mean, we already over time, but I'm not gonna
Yes.
do that. Yeah, Sarah knows, you know, I can admit that he's not a main character, and if I'm looking at him through the eyes of the main character, I'm gonna be disappointed.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that he's not boring. You
Right.
know, Roland is a terrible unit. Great character because he's flawed. Benedict is a great unit, great character. Frederica is, I don't know yet. The jury's still out on her. Great unit.
Yep.
I don't know. It feels like she wants to be. I guess I don't know.
She's in a weird spot for this story.
Yeah, and like I don't know if she's in love with this guy, and then she has to be playing Moses to her people. It's just a lot of things there. But
She got a lot going on. She got a lot. You give Triangle Strategy one of your highest recommendations.
that Triangle Strategy is the last game I beat in a while. You know, and
And
yeah, and as far as tactical RPG goes, I if for a first timer, I would probably say play something like Fire Emblem that
mhm.
we play or Engage
Yeah, we got you to do it
or
again.
Awakening. Play Awakening.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, Awakening is, I think, a lot of people's entry into the spot. And so those are our thoughts. The last thing, where can they find you online if you want them to find your like Twitter
And
responses?
whenever you invite me back, that's when they can find where they can
That's
find
it.
me.
Okay, okay, okay. When the next
People
time,
who know me, they know where I'm
I
at.
wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. But if you want
No,
to
but
find, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I just do this because you and I have, a shared interest. I love you, and these are the conversations that I like to have. And it's not you being Skip Bayless and we spouting off hot takes and stuff like that. But no, these are just. I'm not a podcaster, so I'm sorry if it doesn't translate well. I just like to enjoy having these conversations.
I enjoy having these conversations, and that's why I'm glad we got to do it. We got to do it on wax for people to engage with it, no pun intended, but also just it is when you and I have these conversations on the phone is entirely enriching, and I'm glad we got to have some of that and get to. I think the other thing is I don't tend to say this angle out loud, but it's like it's good to have niggas talk about JRPGs and niggas talking about strategy RPGs. I don't think that's a thing that you get to see often. And so for the culture, as weird as it sounds, I think that it's just good for people to see. That's where I stand. But
No, definitely, and like I said, I'm glad that you invited me. I love to come back whenever. I want us to once I'm done with this dissertation and the job
yes,
market stuff, I want to do like playthroughs with you. We like I want to do Fire Emblem. I'll do Ogre's event or Ogre Tactics with you or
yeah,
whatever. You
we'll
know,
definitely do that.
so yeah, I'm whenever you need me and I had a time, that's when I
Yes,
come through.
when you need me, when we have time. And so on that note, thank you guys for all for listening. You can find me at TheWolvesDen 25, both on Twitter and Instagram, and Menu Combat is for the podcast. If you have questions for myself, or if you have questions for Jeremiah, throw them at my Twitter and I'll get the answers and I'll throw it back at y'all. But we appreciate y'all. This is a longer episode than usual, but I think you got a lot of meat on the bone today. Shout outs to Benedict. That's our nigga.
Benedict is the goat.